My name is David Lorimer, and the Program Director of the Scientific and Medical Network, and I'm here with Honorary Member Professor Marjorie Woollacott to talk a little bit about her life and work in the context of our Golden Jubilee. And my first question, Marjorie, is who and or what inspired your line of work? And I know you started as a musician and then you later became a neuroscientist.
That's right. And of course, the musical aspect of my training was actually very informative later on, in that it really did help me to connect with my own creative potential and try to really be in the moment with whatever I was doing, whether it was performing in music or actually doing research in neuroscience. And I want to say that I've always been intrigued about those underlying processes that guide the workings of our minds, our bodies, and the universe itself. And as a graduate student then, I was trained in materialist neuroscience, and thus I put forth efforts to understand the complex workings of the brain and how it creates consciousness, because I believed it was the brain that did create consciousness. But then with the spiritual awakening, I had the direct experience that there was much more than that to material reality. And so in my research lab, I then began to explore the effects of practices like meditation that can actually create expanded states of our consciousness. And of course, that then led to my writing my book, Infinite Awareness, The Awakening of a Scientific Mind, in which I was motivated to explore the scientific research supporting the theory that consciousness is fundamental, and it's actually the source of material reality. So that was sort of the thread of the development throughout my research career.
Now that's very interesting, because your work in, or your path rather, is in somewhat respects similar to Federico Faggin, because he was involved in technology and microprocessors, and also was a committed scientific materialist until he had a very, very extraordinary experience in the late 1990s. And it completely turned his worldview around. So
absolutely, yes.
And he's obviously one of our honorary members as well, so I'll be speaking to him on a different occasion. And then in bringing these different aspects together, Marjorie, what do you think is your most significant contribution to the overall field?
Yes, and I think that's a fascinating question. And I realize I first want to acknowledge my early contributions to healthcare and helping design better assessment and treatment tools for helping persons with movement disorders like cerebral palsy or stroke or balance issues with aging. But saying that, I believe that my work on the nature and transformative effects of meditation and other phenomena like near-death experiences is very important right now, as I hope it's beginning to support the acceptance of the power of those phenomena to really transform people's lives.
Yes, I would agree, and I think all of this is very important and central to our work. And then this is a broader question about how you see the evolution of consciousness studies and the relationship between science and spirituality over the next 20 years. I mean, we've been part of this process for the last 20 or 40 years. How do you see that going forward?
Well, I believe that consciousness studies is truly being accepted as a viable field of research, including the transformative powers of meditation, psychedelics, and NDEs on people's lives. And I think we can see that right now, even in the press, where research on psychedelics, research on meditation is really blossoming. And there are many, many more peer-reviewed articles on exactly how they transform lives. And I believe that as more young professors interested in this area receive tenure and then bring their research to the forefront of science, there's going to be a tipping point and it will all become much more accepted. And I want to mention one example, I think, is the fact that the Nobel Prize for Physics this last year was awarded to 3 men, Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger, for their work in quantum technology. And they were recognized for conducting experiments concerning quantum entanglement. Again, that phenomenon that occurs when 2 particles behave as one, even when they're separated by thousands of miles. And to me, this tells me that the universe is much more interconnected than we might think. And I believe it's a possible basis for both the theory of the primacy of consciousness and the entangled aspects of consciousness that are reported in so many papers on the topic by our fellow colleagues in the Scientific and Medical Network.
Yeah, indeed, like Dean Radin, for instance. I agree. I think there's a lot of metaphorical mileage, if I can put it that way, in quantum entanglement. And then coming on to the network How do you see both the network and the Galileo Commission? How do you see their significance to researchers in the field and in the wider society?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when I actually joined the Galileo Commission and the Scientific and Medical Network, it really expanded my research and my network with other researchers around the world and allowed me to go deeper. And I'll just give one example. I was invited to be a speaker at the Beyond the Brain meeting a few years ago, and I met Chris Rowe, and we established a wonderful collaboration related to doing research on experiences of communications from the other side, after-death communications, and that led to other interactions with Chris and with others around the world. So I think that the beauty of the Scientific and Medical Network for all of us as scientists is that it is a great place for both networking with other scientists, but also for learning more from these scientists through all of the presentations that the Galileo Commission and the Scientific and Medical Network give that give us new insights into consciousness and then help us move further forward in our own understanding.
Yes, I very much agree with that, because I think there's both a professional aspect to this, if you like, or an academic aspect, and also a personal aspect. And part of the rationale of the network, as far as I'm concerned, is really the development of friendship. And I've made a lot of friends through the network, and you sounds like you have as well.
Yes.
And then coming to my final question, which is the sort of $64,000 one. Which is, what have been your most important lessons from life, personally and professionally?
And I think that my most important lesson was that first spiritual awakening that helped me see the world around me with a whole different lens than I'd been able to see before as a scientist training in materialism and having not had spiritual experiences before. And that allowed me to sense my interconnectedness with others and with the entire planet. And that led to the shift in both my research and in my outer behavior. For example, increased compassion for others and being able to see situations not just from my own perspective, but from a different lens of the other person. I could now see myself sitting on the shoulder of the other person and seeing reality from their lens as well, and allowed me to see perhaps a more umbrella lens that covered both of our perspectives, that allowed me to see how both could be true at the same time from a broader perspective.
Yes, empathy and broadened understanding. Well, that's very important. And Marjorie, thanks so much for joining this series of interviews with our honorary members.
Thank you.